Hello, my lovelies. Eileen Curlin-Walsh again, welcoming you to Where the Road Rises, Law, Lessons and Legacy. I love today's guest, and I cannot wait for you to meet her. Mary Kay Scowikowski is an Emmy-nominated speaker, a business veteran, and a master storyteller who uses her own journey through crippling panic to inspire others. Mary Kay was once unable to leave her own home, and now she speaks to thousands. She has trained Fortune 500 companies, spoken to health, education, women's groups. She mentored me when I first began speaking and presenting, and was generous with her hard-earned advice. Mary Kay has also had a lifelong focus on faith, social justice, women's empowerment, and senior life enrichment. She is warm and wise and funny, and I am delighted to have her share her stories and her wisdom with us today. Welcome, Mary Kay.
Oh, thank you, Eileen. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
So let's just get started with your childhood. How did you grow up? What are the times you were born into, your parents? What was your environment like?
Very, very good environment in that my parents were immigrants, and they had come over from Ireland, and they really had wonderful faith. I think that was the greatest gift they gave the four of us children, because it was something that we could, that would take us through the rest of our lives. They were hard workers. My dad had 2 jobs for 14 years to give us a Catholic education. So he would go out and he was a pipe fitter during the day, and at night he was a Chicago policeman. So the fun time would be at about 5 o'clock when my mother would want him to discipline us. She would line us up at 5 p.m. and say, your father now is going to talk to you. And the poor man, he was running in between jobs, and then he'd say, well, you shouldn't have done that. And he never would hit us, because he was hit as a child. So he never would hit us. But we would be so afraid to have to meet him at 5 p.m. Because we respected him that much.
The strict disciplinarian, as was so often the case in Irish households.
That's right, that's right,
Lovely.
right.
And then what about your teenage and early years? Did you follow the traditional path?
I think I can remember. I went to Aquinas High School, which was in South Shore, and we were over southeast near Stony Island. That's where our home was, and we would get on the bus and go over to South Shore to Aquinas. It was run by the Adrian Dominican Sisters, and I remember in my senior year, Sister Rose Francis. No, I'm sorry, I was a sophomore. Sister Rose Francis came up to me. She was teaching seniors, and she said, I see leadership in you. And I looked, I turned around and I said, are you talking to me? Oh. And she said, yes, I do. And she said, I think you should run for student council. And I said, oh, sister, I don't have that many friends. That means the whole school has to vote. And she just said, Mary, I'll help you. I'll make some placards. We'll get the word out. And I won. And that, I know, was a step for me in my leadership role. And if it wasn't for that sister in high school seeing that in me, I don't know where I would have ended up. So she was a big mentor.
Yeah. And mentorship is so important. I know you've mentored many others.
Right.
Mary Kay, you have mentored me.
Yes.
It's an important role, even if we have the skills, someone to see it as and then help draw them out.
Yes, exactly. I think you were talking about early years. Then, of course, what was neat is that I went on to Mundelein College, and then I would work during the day. I couldn't afford Mundelein, so I would work. I'd come downtown and work as a secretary, and then come home. I couldn't stay up at college, and then, of course, I met my future husband. He was going to Loyola, and I was at Mundelein, and we decided after 2 years that I should begin to kind of maybe drop out. And so I went to Illinois State, And then I was so lucky because I got the opportunity to teach fifth graders back at St. Felicitas where I grew up. And so I was a fifth grade teacher for 2 years, which I really loved. And then, of course, marriage at the age of 21 because you said traditional. That certainly was the traditional way to move
And you
along.
went from Brennan to
Yes.
Scowikowski.
Right,
Tell
right.
us the little story. As I was researching your very early videos, I come across a little speech where you told your audience how you told your students, or how a student told the other
Yes.
students to remember your name.
Well, I was Miss Brennan, and I came in September to the fifth graders. I had 50 in my classroom. That's how many you would be teaching. And I said, you know, October 14th, I'm going to get married, and you can all come to the church, but you have to be very good, and you have to sit together and not say anything because I'm going down the aisle, and I can't discipline you. And they went, oh, sure. Well, I have a picture. 50 fifth graders in that St. Felicitas church all together watching Miss Brennan, their teacher, go down the aisle. So after the honeymoon, I came back and I put the name Scowikowski up on the board. And they said, what? We can't say it. We don't like it. We like Brennan. We can say Brennan. Why did you do that? And you know, they were 10 years old, and I said, because if you find a good man one day, you'll be very lucky. So be quiet. Those were the days teachers could say that and get away with that. So one little boy who always gave me a hard time said, I know how we're going to help you. And I went, uh-oh, I'm worried now. What's he going to say? So I said, okay. Get up, let's hear what you have to say. And he said, yes. He said, we'll just think of you as slow as a cow on skis. And that's how we're going to remember Scowikowski. So Brennan became Scowikowski.
And that's how I remember it
That's
too.
right.
So when you were a young mother home with young children, you suffered from agoraphobia and
Right.
panic attacks. Tell
Right.
us about how that influenced your
Well,
life.
my husband was moving up the ladder at McDonald's Corporation, and they had asked him to move. We were Southsiders. When we got married, we moved 2 blocks away from where I grew up. So parents, sister-in-laws were across the street. Everybody was right there together. And McDonald's wanted him to move to Wisconsin. He wanted to be on the fast track. He wanted to become a vice president at McDonald's. He was the first person to get a degree that worked at McDonald's. All of the managers had come up through the stores with Ray Kroc, and so he went. My husband got not only a degree at Loyola but a master's at Loyola. So McDonald's had never seen this before. They had never hired anyone with a degree, and so he wanted to be on the fast track. He wanted to move up. He wanted to make sure that if he did the right things, that he would move up. The right thing at McDonald's at that time was to work in a store. He had to understand the operations end of the business. So in that turn, we moved. We had to physically move to, it was Wauwatosa in Wisconsin. And that's where I first suffered a panic attack while driving my car. I think I was so lonely for family. And then, you know, he was gone all the time, and I had 3 babies, 2, 4, and 6 years old. And it was very hard to meet people, and I love people, but it just became very depressing. So I think that's where it started, the panic attack, and then soon it moved into agoraphobia, which means that you're too afraid to leave your own home. So I became too afraid to go outside, to drive a car, because every time I would get more and more panic attacks, that the fear just grabbed a hold of me, and I couldn't even be a good mother. So my sister, who was studying to be an Adrian Dominican sister, Sister Peggy Brennan, up in Michigan, came by Greyhound with her guitar. So we had the guitar, and my sister left the convent and moved in with us. So I had more guilt, more Irish guilt with the nun leaving the nunnery to be with me, but it was just what I needed. She had to help with the babies, and she was just a positive force in our lives, so it was just what we needed.
And she helped nurse you back to health.
Yes, the caregiver. Yes.
And how did you take the leap then to becoming a speaker?
I know.
When did you know you had that gift to not just leave your home, but, as we said earlier, to speak to thousands of people?
Well, I started to get better. I went to a group called Recovery Incorporated, which is its headquarters here in Chicago. It's an old group. And I went to support meetings, and I learned how to face my fears, do the thing you feared to do, and that's the death of fear. And I just wanted to come back. I did not want to be a young mother and that I couldn't even take care of my children. And as a matter of fact, I was out, because the doctor would tell me, move your muscles. You know, if ever you get these panics, get out and pull the weeds or grab a dish towel, but get your mind off of what's happening, because of course the mind is constant that you're not going to make it. And so I remember I was out in the garden weeding and crying. It was probably one of the lowest days of my life, and I was listening to my sister play the guitar inside the kitchen with the children, and I thought, my God, those children are getting to like her more than me. So, you know, those are things that bring you back. You go, hey, she has to get back to the convent. This isn't what she bought into, and I've got to get back to life. So I took antidepressants. I did everything it took. Took about 3 years, but then we moved to another location, and I helped the McDonald wives move in. So that started to give me a purpose and build my self-esteem, which I needed badly. And they loved it. And then the word got back to McDonald's in Oak Brook, and so they offered my husband a directorship, moving him back in, moving him right in line for vice president, and they decided to hire me, the first wife they've ever hired at McDonald's, and I helped set up their relocation department. And it was there that there was a consultant working for my husband, and he said to me one day, I have a program, it's called Adventures in Attitudes. I think you'd be very good at leading this. And I remember saying, what's wrong with my attitude? And he said, no, it's not that. He said, and I think you stay in the corporate life, it's going to be hard because there won't be balance, and your husband's gone 80% of the time. And so that's when I began to look into, maybe I could start a business. Yes. Maybe I could have, and so I did. I did with him. I got him, I cold called for 6 years and got many people to take the workshop. And then he taught me everything I needed to learn about the business. And then one night, after 10 years of being in my own business, I watched PBS on television, and they had Les Brown on.
Yes.
Who was a wonderful, you know him well. He was a wonderful motivational speaker. Of course, they had Wayne Dyer. They had all of these men speakers. And I was by myself in the living room, and I took one look at that, and the thought came into my mind, which I just always believe is the Holy Spirit, that where are the women? I knew there were women speakers because I was out there, and I knew women were out there. Why don't we have women on this show? So I called information. 411 those days, and I called and I said, I want to know WTTW Studios. Could I call? And I did, and I said, where are the women? And nicely. And she said, oh, this is interesting because there's 2 producers in downtown Chicago right now looking at 150 women's tapes, women speakers. And they said, if you want to be a part of that, what you have to do is do you have a tape? And I had just spoken at the Chicago Theater for 5,000 people of World Book, I had a tape. And so they said, send it down, and mine was chosen. And that's went on to PBS to give that talk. Yeah.
And nominated for an Emmy along with Oprah Winfrey.
That's right.
Now, she won it, but what great company to be in.
Right.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.
And then, so you've spent all those years in community outreach, speaking to struggling groups, helping people. What has it taught you about human nature, the human condition? What are the common themes?
Well, first of all, I did a lot for and with women. It's all coming to fruition today with what we're seeing. But back then, women weren't given many opportunities. I remember when I started my own business, I couldn't get a credit card, so I'm one of those people. And everything had to go through my husband. And I remember when I cold call, I was the only woman in the lobby going up to see these CEOs, and I would get in because I was like a coffee break. Oh, well, who's that, a woman? And they were, so many men mentored me, and that's really what gave me my start. But then I wanted to help women along the way. So I started 4 different associations. One was Women in Management in Oak Brook, and in 1 year we had 400 members. It was such a need. Women had nowhere to go to network. We weren't allowed in all the groups at that time.
What year are we talking about?
I would say 1979, 1981.
Just as recently as that.
Yes.
Not being able to get a credit card, file your own tax return. It really is probably shocking to our millennial girls and women to realize that.
Yes.
We have come a long way. We have a ways to go, and you are one of the trailblazers.
So I think that's probably one of the things I can look back at and know that I've helped a lot of women. And then I wrote a program for women. Forgot about that, the Future Woman Seminars, and we had 50,000 graduates of that seminar all over the country. And then we trained women. 5,000 certified coordinators came in to Oak Brook to our sessions. We trained them, and they went back and they trained women. So that was about the 80s, early 80s, up to about 85 that we did a lot of that, yes.
And you saw that the skills that women could bring were equal to, complementary to, and very much needed in the workplace with the men who had already established themselves there.
Yes, it was. And then large companies, I won't name any, were having a lot of trouble with men at the time because men were not open to women and being in management. And so they would bring me in. I had a profile I would give them, and I would find out that most of them had that wonderful dominant personality. Well, that's a take charge person, and they can get everything done themselves. Why would they need more people? And team building wasn't something that was important at the time. So we began to train men on how to accept women. And I know I even did a lot of training. I'll name one place which was very vital, and that was Quaker Oats, where the women who were in administrative assistants wanted to become managers, and many of the men didn't even think about them for management, not the administrative assistant. And besides, we don't want to lose her.
Yes, in the position she was in.
Exactly, and they were getting degrees, and they wanted to move up. So I had a session where I brought all the vice presidents, which were all men, and all the women who were administrative assistants, and we had a needs analysis. We did an open discussion for 3 hours in that room. It was powerful because the women were very direct and said, look at us as people that could work right with you on your team and become vice presidents too. Don't just look at us that we're administrative assistants, which is not a bad job. It was my first job, but that we're more than that. So those were all kinds of wonderful times where we could, and the men were, wow, they really wanted to do something. They didn't like the way it was. So just like right now, what we're going through.
So leadership in those times, and blazing a trail was part of what shaped you. What about, you mentioned your faith, that was really important to you as a child growing up. How has it informed your life, your work, and what role do you see faith playing in our successes?
It's everything to me. It's everything. It's just, it was a gift by wonderful parents and a wonderful Monsignor Walsh and wonderful priests, and it was just a gift. But after PBS, I didn't get as far as I wanted to go. I really wanted to be Miley Cyrus, you know, and sell a lot of books, and that didn't happen. And so I kind of spiraled down into a bit of a depression again. And this time, of course, menopause added to it, which was really, it's bad enough, menopause without without depression on top of it. So I went through that, and I went through migraine headaches, which was part of menopause. And I would get maybe 3 a week, so I couldn't work. And I had to stop because my work was speaking in front of groups, and so I had to stop. And so after trying everything, and after 3 or 4 years, one night, it was 4 in the morning, and I went into one of the bedrooms, and I really just cried out to the Lord. I begged to take the pain away. I had so many years of this pain, and if you've ever had a migraine, you'll understand. And I just begged the Lord, and it was dark in that room, and all of a sudden a white light came into that room, and it lit up the whole room, and it was so strong that it pushed me back, and I perspired from head to toe. And I didn't see anything, but I knew it was God. I knew it. And it was like giving me another chance to step out and say, come on. And to me, when you do not believe there is a God, I'm just here to say there is a God, and it's a merciful God, merciful God. So the next day, I was walking to church. You would too after that. And I got there to church, and I met an old friend who was a nurse. Listen to this. And I'm walking along, and she starts walking with me. And I said, oh, I have such migraine. She said, why? I have a doctor for you in Hinsdale. She's a woman. She will give you things. You should not have that kind of pain. So I went, and I began to get healed. Now, of course, my daughter said, well, did you get healed as soon as the white light hit you? And no, but it took a while, but I was finally healed of all that pain. So I've read in the Gospels that when you cry out to the Lord, and every time you read that, he or she seems to answer. Yeah. And in some way, something will happen. Yeah. So my crying out that night was really strong, really strong.
That's powerful. And at that time, Mary Kay, that you were going through the migraine, going through menopause, you were also a caregiver.
Right.
We focus on caregiving in this show. We try to reach out, shine a light on how hard it is to take care of parents, spouses, children. And there you were, going through menopause, going through that awful pain, and taking care of your mother. Tell us about that experience.
My dad had died at 78, which was a great age, and my mother was still very vital and moving on, and then she wanted to come and move in with me, and I was having the migraines and also the business, trying to keep the business afloat because it had to be. I remember when you were going through some things and you had to keep going out and keep the business going.
Oh, yes.
Right.
We have to keep the lights on.
That's what you said. So I said to my mother, maybe we could work it out with the 4 of us children. You know, maybe we could do something. So they all agreed, and they wanted to take my mother, you know, a month here, a month there. And my mother liked me. And she liked the others, but I was more I the one that was really taking care of her a lot. She lived in Midlothian. We lived in Midlothian for a while, and she didn't drive, so I came from Darien now and picked her up and did the groceries. So I found that I couldn't do it by myself. I mean, I couldn't do it with at that point in my life, and that's got to be hard. Because if you came from Ireland, I mean, they not only took care of all the aunts and the grandmas, and the cows would come in sometimes in the winter, as I was told, in where my parents were from, that, you know, this was what you do. So the guilt was awfully strong. And so it was so dear what happened. My oldest daughter was her granddaughter, and she had a few granddaughters, but my oldest daughter Anne really loved Grandma Mary. And it was Anne that went to my mother, and she said to my mother, you know, I don't think you're going to be happy with going from house to house. Are you really, Grandma? And she went, no, I don't want that. And so Anne said, well, then why don't we get you a place to stay somewhere? There's a place, St. Joseph's in Joliet, and you'd have Mass every day. And my sister-in-laws had looked into it. Everybody was trying to help. And Anne talked my mother into it. And I thought, who would think that your oldest granddaughter would be the one that would help? So that's why you have to be very open as a caregiver, that it's not just you,
yes,
it's others.
Yes. And that you just touch on one of the joys of caregiving, if we can get around the obstacles, and that is to enjoy the 3 generations side by side for that limited time. You were able to, your mother and your granddaughter, make some progress together.
Right, right.
What words of comfort would you offer to our caregivers who are currently in that situation where they cannot see the way forward and they're not taking care of themselves at all because they're spending so much time caring for the others in their lives?
Well, I made sure that I worked out every day. I made sure that I took care of myself, because if you suffer a mental illness like I did, or these migraine headaches, you want to be strong physically. I wanted to be able to go on. So I made sure I'd go to acupuncture, I would go massage, everything it took to keep me at a level playing field so that I could move on like that and take care of family. And also I really had a lot of meetings with my 2 brothers and sister. And really we laid it out on the line, how we needed to help, how we had to get involved, how it just couldn't be the women that go in, which is definitely what it was. It had to be the brothers. They had to come, which they started to do even more. And then the grandchildren, we got them involved, and that hey, will you go see Grandma on Sunday? And my mother was very vital. She lived to be 99. She had all her senses. She knew about everybody in the family, and we kept her that way. I remember one time, though, she had kind of stopped eating, and of course, I was Miss Fix-It in the family. I fixed everything, whether you wanted to be fixed or not, I would fix you. And I hired a woman and made sure that my mother would eat. And then after a while, my mother fired the woman. And I was so furious because I thought, do you know how hard this was to get this woman? And you fired her. Now, I look back now, my mother had good reasons, because I don't think the woman was worth the money, and that's why she was upset. But then I became so upset with my mother. And I know I didn't talk to her for a while. I thought, I'm trying to do everything. And then maybe that was the problem. She didn't need me to do everything. She might needed to make her own decisions too. And now as I get older, God knows what my children will do to me, but
I suspect you're still making all your own decisions. Now, in addition to a caregiver's mental and physical health, you alluded to things it can do, which is wonderfully important. But what about their own goals and dreams and ambitions? You speak so much on motivation and inspiration and cultivating your own garden. Would you recommend that they still keep reaching themselves? Their life is not over. Their goals and dreams can still be uplifted in the midst of the caregiving, and maybe that will be the lifesaver itself.
Right. Very good. Very good. I think that there's an end to the time that you're going to be giving to somebody, and that definitely you need to keep moving yourself and bettering yourself, not only physically, mentally, spiritually, that whole balance wheel. Yeah. Definitely, I think that time comes where you get to maybe move on a little bit more and travel or do things you want to do. And I think just if you have that faith and a little of that patience, that time is coming.
Tell us about some of the groups that you lead. For example, Encore, not just our caregivers, but all of our audience, our more mature members. These are the kinds of things they can go to really still examine their lives and find enrichment and meaning. So tell us about that one particular program you run.
Well, the enrichment and meaning, just as how beautifully you say it, we found it at Old St. Pat's in the city. We were searching for a church that would build us up a little. I'd been in charge of social justice for 20-some years at the church, Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Darien, and I loved it, and I gave back. But then there came a time where I wanted to focus on me a little bit in my church. Homilies, good homilies, beautiful music, a sense of strong, positive community. So like many of us at Old St. Pat's, we found our way down there through our older children. My son lived across the street at Presidential Towers, and he kept saying, "You're missing something. You're really missing something. You should come down here to this church and hear these priests. These homilies are outstanding." So we went down and we thought, oh, downtown? That's crazy. We live in way out here, and how we go downtown? But it's interesting, on a Sunday, it's about a 25-minute ride to get you from Darien down to Old St. Pat's. Once I got down there, I knew this was it. And that was about 15 years ago. This was it. And they have never let me down in all the 15 years with the homilies. And so they needed somebody to head up the 50 and over group. And they came to me after I was a member for a couple of years, because I started a discussion series out in Darien at the Carmelite Center, which we have coming up on the 19th, I think, we bring in speakers. And so I started that. And the people in charge of Old St. Pat's on the staff heard about it, and so they asked me if I would head up Encore. Encore's 50 and over, and it really, we do so many social events. We do retreats. We do ways for people to get to know each other, and it's just excellent how we've grown and how that board, we have about 20 people on the board now who want to make sure that this stays very positive and that it's something for the 50 and over.
Yeah, something we could really use here on the Southwest side also. Tell me about another belief in addition to your faith and leadership that has informed your life. Is it family, love, help, giving back?
Yeah, I think I have 10 grandchildren now, and we've just been blessed. We had 3 children, and then 12 years later we have Timothy. And so Timothy is the one that's bringing new babies, and then my son Eddie, a new baby. So Christmas was very different because we have all these older ones starting at 22 on down, most of them in high school. And then now we have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 5-month-old who's going to be baptized this Sunday at Old St. Pat's. It's just, well, they believe in Santa Claus, you know, and we've
That's
lost all
Christmas.
that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
so that was fun. But family has been very important. My husband joined me in the business. He left McDonald's eventually, and he joined me, and he has been in business with me. We're married over 50 years. Our children are in the business with us. So we did it for balance, because we weren't finding that balance in the corporate life. And when we did decide to do it, then our whole life changed, because we had to move from a 3,600 square feet home that mortgage was being paid for by McDonald's to an 1,800 square foot condominium with 3 children at the time, and make a go with that for 12 years so that we could leave the corporate life and start a business. It's interesting, if you talk to my older children now, they'll tell you their happiest moments in their childhood was that 12 years in the condo, which we had no family room, a little kitchen, but everybody had to communicate.
Yes, you couldn't escape.
No, no. And in the other place, they all had their own bedrooms, and, you know, so nobody. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
More big lessons.
Right.
So is that when you're happiest? When you're speaking with groups? When you're with your
Oh,
family?
yeah.
What's your utter sweet spot?
Well, I just came back from North Carolina, where I gave a 3-day retreat for a Catholic group, and I just loved it. It seems like I'm doing more spiritual talks as I grow older, which would make sense. But I'm on my way next week to a university in Miramar and outside of Fort Lauderdale to give a talk on powerful presentations, because obviously that's what I've done all these years, and now I teach people how to make a good presentation. And I do a lot of training inside of another company in Schaumburg, and I do a lot of skill building with them, and not only teaching them leadership, but also coaching, also counseling, helping the employees. So it's just lovely, because your wisdom is there.
Yes.
And thank God, all that exercise, the body is still there, you know.
Yes.
And I can do it. I can travel. I love it, and teach, and it's just all evolving, and it's. I didn't become Miley Cyrus, but I think the lesson must have been when I got the Emmy nomination and then didn't get the book or all the things I'd get. I was so heartbroken. But now when I look back, the good Lord gave me so much more. I can come to this place with a family that's balanced, the children have married, that grandchildren have come, that a husband that's still involved, and I don't know if I'd have had all that if I was on my way on some yellow brick road. I don't know.
And you're full of love and gratitude.
That's right. Constant gratitude. Yes.
Do you have a favorite poem, Bible verse, a book? What's your favorite inspirational work for our viewers?
It's so funny. I'm just back into, of course, Eckhart Tolle and the Living in the Now, and I'm on YouTube and listening. I remember doing that with Oprah and Eckhart every Monday night back at probably 1981 or so.
Yes.
And now they're on YouTube, and I'm back listening to them and gaining again, trying very much to live in the moment. I love the prayer of St. Francis, because I think of the peace and how much we need that in every turn in our life today. And I think that's it. I think those two have really helped me a lot.
I love Eckhart Tolle too,
Yes.
one of my biggest influences. So at this stage in your life, does everything make sense? Or is there still some mystery?
At this stage of my life, everything makes sense. No mystery. At this stage of my life, I don't watch a lot of television. I pray, but sometimes I miss praying. but I really work on enjoying the moment, and I really, my mind is so much more settled. Who is a woman you and I like a lot that helps with the mind?
Well, Louise Hay's one
Yes.
of my favorites.
But there's another one, Byron Katie.
Oh, yes, yes. She's
Byron, it's a woman, but BYRONKADIE. And I really follow her so that when I have any negativity, I follow what she says, write down, is it true, what I'm thinking? Am I sure it's true? How do I feel when I think that thought? That's good. Agitated. Then let's turn it around. Let's change the thought. So I'm really working on myself with that. And I also help my son. He's a house dad, Tim. So he brings the little babies. I get part, the other grandma gets them. And they were just with me yesterday, and I really helped him. And there's a real reason that I'm so grateful for that, is that when Tim was a baby, I was full-fledged into the business. So I had to bring him to a babysitter. I didn't with the first 3, but it's kind of interesting. My mother once said it's a shame you didn't have Mrs. Bowley raise your first 3 too.
Maybe Mrs. Bowley did a better job.
She did. She did better than me. Tim was just a great guy, and he was disciplined, and the other 3 weren't. So, so Tim, I always felt guilt. I mean, just think, 8 weeks old, and you're bringing him to somebody,
I know.
and that, and the guilt. But I had to do it. It was right in the throes of the business. You couldn't walk away. And so I love how the Jewish people talk about atonement. Because I thought, wait a second, he's a house dad now, and maybe I could help as much as I can with the babies. So that's what I do. And it's not easy because they're 2 and 4, but when he comes, I give him breaks, and he can go for a run, and I'm with the babies. And you'll just love what the 4-year-old said the other day. He was getting his shots, and he came out and talked to his dad, and he said, you know, Dad, those people shouldn't do those things to people. They should not do those things to people.
Injustice.
Yeah.
How come nothing has been done about that? Maybe we could start.
No shots. So anyway, look at how the dear Lord has let me atone. And now the guilt is gone. You know, now it's gone.
You've paid the price.
That's it.
And then some.
That's it.
Final question.
Yes.
Because you have been such a leader, such a forerunner for women's rights, and because we are right now in the Me Too Time's Up movement, what would your advice be for young women who do want to climb the ladder and who may have experienced some difficulty? What would your words from all your years be to them?
Tell people right away if something's wrong. Don't harbor it and don't hold it like we did. I think we did it because who would listen? People wouldn't even believe you so much. So they would tell you, I know what they used to say to me, snap out of it. You'll get over that. And you think, no, wait a minute, we don't get over it. If we've been harassed or something, some way we've been bothered, we don't get over it. It stays with us. And so therefore we want to let that go. And I'm just so thrilled that people are speaking out now, and those 150 athletes, it's so good. If they're young, and so for young women to see this, and I know how Tim raises that little Wesley. I don't think, and you have 4 boys, we don't raise our boys to be that way. We don't want them to be that way, and they're not. And I think they need to speak out too.
Yes.
If people are bullying them or saying things, they've got to be able to speak out. Boys used to be, I'm so strong, I don't have to tell anyone anything, but that's not right.
Yeah.
They're sensitive. They need to hear, just like my son being there after the doctors loaded him up with shots at the age of 4. People shouldn't do that to people.
This is not someone who's ever going to allow himself to be bullied or abused.
No, no, and we love that in him, and we need to cherish that in all of us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And from the young woman I speak to, what we're looking for is equality. We're not looking to turn the pendulum now and women to get into a position of power, and Lord knows how that would turn out. If we can just all be equal, recognize our strengths, and work alongside each other.
Yes,
absolutely.
Exactly. It's happening, it will, and I think then you're going to have, and there's always the balance issue. There's always what about the children?
Yes.
And I don't believe you get everything at once. I know that's not true. If I wanted to be able to go to a play or a basketball game, that's why I chose going in my own business. But sometimes you have to give up things. But if you have a boy like my son, who is better than 15 women, his love, his affection, his caring for those babies, I see that as a wonderful part that men can play, and are playing very, very strongly today.
So men and women will benefit from the equality
that
we are seeking.
Together.
Thank you so much, Mary
You're welcome.
Kay.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for watching. You can find out more about Mary Kay, book an event, see her list of events at her website, makingithappen.net, or you can find out information about Mary Kay as well as me at wheretheroadrises.com. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time on Where the Road Rises.
Thank you.